Greer delivered the first hit warning that the U.S. could walk away from USMCA in 2026.
Can you also talk about the USMCA and what you're thinking about renegotiating that with the automakers?
Well, that's just an ongoing thing. It expires in about a year, and we'll either let it expire or we'll maybe work out another deal with Mexico and Canada. But
it wasn't a side comment. It was a clear threat to unravel the economic framework that has held North America together for decades. Then came a deeper escalation. President Trump declared his intent to push back hard against Canada, even suggesting Ottawa should be treated like a 51st state, injecting a level of bluntness that unsettled diplomats and investors alike. The final rupture came when the U.S. ambassador publicly raised concerns about Canada's political advertising rules and their potential cross-border impact, a point Ottawa disputed, leading talks to stall and prompting Washington to consider splitting USMCA into two separate agreements. It marked a moment when the regional balance seemed at risk of breaking entirely, but something unexpected followed. Rather than weakening Canada, the pressure began to loop back. The leverage aimed at Ottawa started stirring uncertainty inside the U.S. economy itself.
He's probably the most disliked politician in the world in Canada because he's attacked his closest family member, and that's the way we look at it.
And so we'll fight against them. My job as the Minister of Industry is to make sure to engage with the companies and to engage with the union leaders.
And that leads to a sharper question. What if the strategy meant to corner Canada ends up destabilizing the United States? Before we continue, feel free to like and subscribe. The key twist that explains how this pressure flipped is coming next. The expectation in Washington was that Canada would capitulate under the sustained pressure. But something unusual is happening. The response was not one of retreat, but rather a strategic reorientation, turning what appeared to be a defensive posture into an offensive maneuver on a new geopolitical chessboard. The International Monetary Fund in December 2025 noted Canada's surprising level of resilience amidst the surrounding tariff uncertainties. This assessment highlighted an economy adapting faster than many initial projections indicated. Foreign direct investment into Canada rose by $77.8 billion, pushing the total to $1.5 trillion, a figure that some analysts suggest surpassed even internal U.S. estimates. Canada began redesigning its supply chains into two distinct systems, one dedicated to the U.S. market and another oriented towards global markets. This reduced an inherent vulnerability. Businesses started actively re-establishing export routes to the European Union, India, and South America, decreasing their dependence on pathways that necessarily transited through the United States. For example, Newfoundland and Labrador rapidly shifted its energy focus, with over 50% of its oil now directed to Europe, a stark contrast to the less than 10% seen 2 decades prior. And this is where the stakes begin to collide. How does an external pressure point become an internal catalyst for economic restructuring? If you want to keep exploring stories that don't always make it into the headlines, subscribing helps us bring them to you. The pressure Washington sought to exert, intended for an external target, began to reflect inward, impacting the very economy it sought to protect. This reverse effect became visible in key economic indicators within the United States. U.S. manufacturing experienced a decline for 9 consecutive months leading up to November 2025, marking the longest sustained contraction since the 2008 financial crisis. This trend was not isolated. Transport equipment manufacturers, a bellwether for industrial health, began cutting personnel and moving portions of their production offshore, seeking more stable operating environments. Consumer spending also showed clear signs of stress. Cyber Monday sales, often a strong indicator of consumer confidence, increased by only 2.6%, suggesting that the impact of tariffs and trade uncertainty was constraining household budgets. Major corporations such as Costco initiated legal challenges against the U.S. government, seeking tariff refunds actions that could cost Washington billions of dollars in settlements. Industry observers speculate that investment funds are now increasingly categorizing the U.S. as a high policy risk jurisdiction, which some reports suggest has begun to redirect capital flows towards markets perceived as more stable, including Canada. As the U.S. economic landscape showed increasing policy-driven volatility, Canada emerged as a focal point for businesses seeking to mitigate risk. This presented a significant, albeit unexpected, advantage for Ottawa. Canada maintained the second highest foreign direct investment FDI to GDP ratio within the G20, solidifying its position as a perceived safe harbor for international capital. Its extensive network of over 50 free trade agreements enables companies establishing operations within its borders to access global markets without navigating the shifting tariff policies emanating from the US. Companies from the European Union, Japan, and South Korea, for instance, have increasingly chosen Canada as a base. This strategy allows them to remain physically proximate to the broader North American market while effectively sidestepping potential US tariffs. The combination of robust infrastructure, a highly skilled workforce, and consistent policy frameworks positioned Canada favorably over the US in terms of predictability, a critical factor for long-term investment. Many US corporations, rather than expanding domestically, now consider Canada a buffer zone during periods of heightened policy fluctuation, indicating a reevaluation of regional investment strategies. As external trade barriers gained prominence, Canada began a process of internal industrial reconstruction. This pivot aimed to reduce dependencies and bolster domestic capabilities, particularly within its manufacturing and technology sectors. Canadian businesses initiated efforts to repatriate manufacturing operations specifically to diminish reliance on US-based component supply chains. This strategic shift reflects a broader recognition of supply chain vulnerabilities exposed by recent trade tensions. Surveys indicate that 72% of Canadian manufacturers actively support incentives for nearshoring and the localization of supply chains, signifying a collective push towards greater self-sufficiency. Many enterprises responded by increasing their investment in domestic suppliers, a direct measure to insulate against potential tariff risks and ensure continuity of production. Beyond traditional goods, Canada's export of technology, engineering, and research and development services began to accelerate, outpacing commodity exports. This trend suggests the emergence of a new value layer in the Canadian economy. Industries vital to the future, such as electric vehicles and critical minerals, are benefiting significantly from this reorientation, with Canada increasingly viewed as a stable, clean, and lower-risk source of essential inputs. While some economies experienced a contraction of trade relationships and an escalation of commercial disputes, Canada pursued an expanded global engagement strategy. This outward focus transformed a crisis into an opportunity for market diversification and deeper international partnerships. Canada actively broadened its export outreach to the European Union, India, and various Asian markets, seeking new avenues for trade beyond its traditional partners. The story of Newfoundland and Labrador's oil production became a clear example of this success, with more than half of its output now directed away from the US market. The European Union, facing geopolitical complexities in other regions, increasingly views Canada as a stable and reliable source for energy and critical minerals. Simultaneously, the Asian business community has begun to perceive Canada as a clean gateway for accessing Western markets, offering predictable regulatory environments and secure supply routes. Canada's comprehensive free trade agreements provide its businesses with a distinct advantage, granting direct access to numerous markets where US enterprises may be experiencing diminishing preferential treatment. The trajectory of Washington's external pressure appears to be diverging sharply from its intended outcome. What was designed to compel Canada into alignment is, in practice, accelerating its independent economic development faster than many initially projected. Should the US proceed with a withdrawal from USMCA, one scenario suggests Canada could solidify its position as an alternative manufacturing and supply chain hub within North America, a development some analysts indicate was not the primary calculation behind Washington's original strategy. The current policy volatility originating from Washington has demonstrably led global enterprises to increasingly choose Canada as a new anchor point for investment and operations. Canada is strategically positioning itself across critical sectors, including electric vehicles and essential minerals, energy production, and high technology. This shift risks altering regional power dynamics. Some observers suggest the US is facing a potential scenario where its own policy actions inadvertently weaken its long-standing economic leadership role within the region. The real question now hangs in the air. Heavier than anyone expected, has the attempt to exert leverage inadvertently created a more formidable competitor at its immediate border, altering regional power dynamics in ways no one anticipated? Thanks for staying until the end. If you want to continue exploring these shifting trends with us, feel free to like and subscribe.